He filed for divorce while I was in labor. Not after the baby was born. Not after we spoke. While I was in labor. The hospital monitor beside my bed was still tracking contractions when he walked into the room holding a slim gray folder. At first, I thought it was paperwork from the hospital. Consent forms. Insurance documents. Something normal. Something human. Instead, he placed the folder on the small tray table beside my bed. Then he said the words that ended our marriage. "You should sign these." I frowned, still trying to breathe through another contraction. What is it? Divorce papers. For a moment, I thought the pain was confusing my hearing. But then he slid the top page toward me. Dissolution of marriage. Emergency custody petition. Temporary sole custody request. My hands started shaking. You're joking. His expression didn't change. No. Another contraction hit. Sharp. Blinding. And the nurse rushed in to check the monitor. He waited patiently while she adjusted the equipment. Like a man discussing routine business. Not someone dismantling a family. When the nurse left, he continued. I'm requesting temporary custody until the court evaluates your emotional stability. Emotional stability. My stomach twisted. You're doing this now? It's better this way, he said calmly. The lawyer advised filing before the birth. Another contraction ripped through my body. I gripped the edge of the bed. You're filing for divorce while I'm having your child. His eyes didn't soften. You've been unstable since the miscarriage last year. That was the moment something inside me went quiet. Not broken. Not shattered. Quiet. Because when betrayal reaches a certain level, it stops hurting. It becomes information. And information can be used. A few hours later, our son was born. Healthy. Perfect. And the first thing I noticed as I held him was that his father had already left. No flowers. No congratulations. No second glance. Just divorce papers on the tray beside my hospital bed. The first court appearance happened 2 weeks later. Emergency custody motion. Temporary orders. The courtroom felt tense. His lawyer spoke confidently. Your Honor, my client seeks temporary sole custody due to documented emotional instability following a pregnancy loss. That word again. Instability. They were building their case around it. Therapy records. Medical history. Emotional grief. Everything designed to paint me as fragile. And for a moment, it worked. The judge listened carefully, nodded occasionally, asked a few questions. Then he delivered the decision. The court will review the evidence further. Adjourned. But the temporary custody request? Still under consideration. Which meant one thing. From the outside, it looked like my alpha was winning. But courtrooms aren't won in the first hearing. They're won in preparation. And my lawyer was already working. Quietly, patiently, strategically. 3 days after the hearing, she called me. I need you to come to my office. When I arrived, she placed a small file on the desk. You said your mother-in-law never approved of you. That's an understatement. She wanted her son to marry someone else? Yes. Do you remember who? I frowned. Then the name surfaced. Peter. A young Omega from a wealthy family. Someone his mother adored. Someone she tried to introduce to him years before our marriage. My lawyer slid a photograph across the desk. My breath caught. It was my husband, leaving a restaurant, with Peter, holding hands. They've been seeing each other for months, she said calmly. How do you know? Private investigator. My chest tightened. So he was cheating. Worse, she replied. She opened another file. His mother arranged several meetings between them before the divorce filing. I stared at the evidence. Photos, messages, financial transfers, everything carefully documented. Suddenly the custody strategy made sense. The divorce timing, the urgency, the accusations. They weren't trying to protect a child. They were trying to remove me, so the new Omega could step in. My lawyer leaned back in her chair. We're not using this yet. Why not? Because the real case hasn't started. She tapped the file. Right now they think they're ahead. I frowned. And that's good. It's perfect. Her smile returned. Because people make mistakes when they think they're winning. The next hearing date was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Long enough for investigations. Long enough for preparation. Long enough for the truth to grow heavier. Across the city, my alpha was probably celebrating his early advantage. Confident, relaxed, certain the court would grant him custody. Certain his plan was working. He thought he had already removed me from the board. But what he didn't realize was that the game had just begun. And while he was focused on winning the next move, my lawyer and I were preparing the final one. The first hearing made it look like he was winning. Temporary custody still under consideration. The judge careful, neutral, almost sympathetic toward my alpha's lawyer. From the outside, it looked like the court believed their argument. That I was unstable, fragile, too emotionally damaged after my miscarriage to raise a child alone. My alpha walked out of that courtroom confident. His mother even smiled as she passed me in the hallway. The kind of smile that says, "You already lost." But my lawyer didn't look worried. Not even slightly, which meant something was wrong. 3 days after I left her office, she called me into her office again. The moment I sat down, she closed the door and lowered her voice. "I need to ask you something very carefully." I nodded. "Do you remember exactly how your mother-in-law reacted when the judge announced the adjournment?" I thought back. Her calm expression, her smug smile, her lack of surprise. She looked certain. My lawyer nodded slowly. "That's what bothered me." She turned her laptop toward me. A series of financial records filled the screen. Transfers. Large ones. Very large ones. All sent from an account belonging to my mother-in-law. And every transfer had the same destination. A consulting firm. One that didn't actually provide consulting. It was a shell company, owned by someone with a familiar name. The judge's brother. For a moment I couldn't speak. "You're saying?" "Yes," my lawyer said quietly. "We believe the judge overseeing your custody case has been bribed." The room went completely still, because if that was true, then the entire trial had already been decided. Not by law, not by evidence, but by money. Most people would panic. Most people would feel powerless. But corruption has one weakness: documentation. And my lawyer was very, very good at gathering it. For the next 2 weeks we worked quietly. No accusations. No confrontations. Just evidence. Financial records. Phone logs. Meeting timestamps. Even security footage from a restaurant where the judge's brother met privately with my mother-in-law 3 times before the hearing. Every piece of information was organized. Every detail verified. Because if we were going to expose a corrupt judge, we had to be absolutely certain. Finally, my lawyer filed 2 motions simultaneously. One with the family court. One with the Judicial Oversight Board. Motion 1. Request immediate transfer of the custody case due to suspected judicial misconduct. Motion 2. Formal investigation into bribery involving the presiding judge. The evidence packet was nearly 200 pages. And once it was submitted, everything changed. The next hearing wasn't quiet. It wasn't procedural. It was explosive. The courtroom was packed. Not just with lawyers and families, but investigators, court officials, even 2 members of the Judicial Review Board. My alpha looked confused when he walked in. His mother looked nervous. The judge looked irritated. But the moment my lawyer stood, the entire room shifted. "Your Honor," she said calmly, We are filing an emergency motion requesting your immediate recusal from this case. The judge frowned. On what grounds? Judicial bribery. Gasps filled the courtroom. My alpha turned toward his mother. Her face had gone completely pale. The evidence was presented one piece at a time. Bank transfers, phone calls, witness statements, meeting footage. Every document placed neatly on the evidence table. By the time the final page was submitted, the judge's hands were visibly shaking, because corruption is powerful. Until it's proven, then it becomes a crime. Within 30 minutes, the hearing was halted. The judge was removed from the case. 2 officers escorted him out of the courtroom under formal investigation. My mother-in-law tried to leave. She didn't get far, because investigators were already waiting. She was arrested in the hallway, right in front of my alpha. 3 weeks later, the case resumed under a new judge. An honest one, careful one, the kind who reads every document before speaking. The courtroom was silent as she reviewed the evidence. The bribery, the custody manipulation, the affair with Peter, the timing of the divorce filing during active labor. By the time she finished reading, her expression was cold. The ruling came quickly. Divorce is granted. My alpha closed his eyes briefly. But that wasn't the important part. Due to the petitioner's misconduct, manipulation of court proceedings, and deliberate attempt to remove the respondent during childbirth, she paused, then delivered the final blow. Permanent physical custody of the minor child is awarded to the respondent. Me. My hands stayed steady in my lap, but my heart finally exhaled. The judge continued. Primary residence, including marital property, will remain with the respondent due to the child's stability needs. Then the final line. Petitioner will retain limited visitation under supervision for 6 months. My alpha didn't speak. He didn't argue, because there was nothing left to argue. But the consequences didn't end there. The bribery investigation concluded 2 months later. The corrupt judge received 10 years in federal prison. My former mother-in-law received the same, 10 years, for judicial bribery and conspiracy. And just like that, the empire she built around control collapsed. Because power based on manipulation never lasts. Eventually, someone documents it. Outside the courthouse, my alpha finally spoke. His voice sounded hollow. You ruined my mother's life. I looked down at my son sleeping peacefully in my arms. Then I looked back at him. No, I said calmly. She ruined her own. For the first time since this began, my alpha looked small, not powerful, not dominant, just a man standing in the shadow of his own mistakes. And the worst part for him? The consequences weren't finished yet. 6 months passed after the court ruling. 6 quiet months where my life slowly returned to something stable. The house felt peaceful again. My son was growing stronger every day, and the chaos that once surrounded my marriage had finally faded into distance. But consequences have a strange way of resurfacing, especially when someone refuses to accept them. The first time I saw him again was somewhere unexpected. Not at my house, not in court, not through lawyers, but at our son's pediatric clinic. It was a Saturday morning appointment. The waiting room was filled with parents holding toddlers, diaper bags, and half-finished coffee cups. Normal life, ordinary people, the kind of quiet place where no one expects drama. I was signing paperwork at the front desk when the receptionist froze. Her eyes shifted toward the entrance behind me. I didn't need to turn around. I already knew. My alpha had arrived. The room felt different the moment he stepped inside. Not louder, just heavier. Because even strangers can sense tension when 2 people with history share the same space. He looked thinner, his posture less confident than I remembered, like someone carrying a weight he couldn't put down. For a moment he simply stood there watching me, watching our son sleeping in the stroller beside me. Then he walked forward slowly. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said quietly. His voice sounded unfamiliar, less sharp, less certain, almost careful. "This is his clinic," I replied calmly. "I know." Silence stretched between us. The other parents were pretending not to listen, but every ear in the room was alert. He glanced down at the stroller. His son. The child he tried to remove before even holding. His hands trembled slightly. "Can I see him?" The question hung in the air. Simple, but heavy, because this wasn't about permission. It was about trust. And trust had been destroyed long ago. "He has supervised visitation," I reminded him. "You know the rules." "I know." His voice cracked slightly. "I just thought." He stopped, unable to finish the sentence, because deep down he already knew the truth. The court had given him a chance. But chances aren't the same as forgiveness. He looked around the waiting room, parents whispering quietly, phones subtly lifting, recognition spreading, because the legal scandal had traveled farther than he expected. People knew about the bribe judge, about his mother's prison sentence, about the custody battle. Reputation spreads fast when it collapses. "I made mistakes," he said quietly. "I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" I asked. "Losing everything." I studied his face. The exhaustion, the regret, the desperation. Then I answered honestly. "You did." The nurse called my son's name. I stood up calmly and began pushing the stroller toward the hallway. He stepped in front of me, blocking the path. "Please," he said suddenly, louder this time. Heads turned. The entire waiting room was watching now. "We can fix this." I raised an eyebrow. "There's nothing to fix." His voice grew more desperate. "I'll do anything." "No." "Counseling." "No." "Therapy." "No." "I'll give up everything." I stopped walking. Then I said the one thing he didn't want to hear. "You already did." He stepped closer. Too close. The kind of closeness that wasn't conversation anymore. It was pressure. "You can't just erase me," he said loudly. His voice echoed through the waiting room. Parents stared openly now. Phones recording. The receptionist quietly moved toward the security desk. Because the situation had crossed a line. "You erased yourself," I replied calmly, "when you filed for divorce while I was giving birth." His jaw tightened. The truth hurts most when it's undeniable. Security approached carefully. "Sir, we're going to need you to step back." But desperation makes people reckless. "I'm not leaving," he snapped. "This is my family." The guard didn't argue. He simply repeated the instruction. "Step back." That was the moment he realized something terrible. Everyone was watching, not with sympathy, not with support, but with quiet judgment. Because when someone tries to claim ownership after destroying trust, people notice. He finally stepped aside, but the damage was already done. Whispers followed us down the hallway as I pushed the stroller toward the exam room. His reputation had just taken another hit, and this time, he did it himself. That night he came to my house. No appointment, no warning, just like before. Desperation has a predictable pattern. When I opened the door, he was standing at the gate, eyes red, hands shaking. "I need to talk." "No. Please." "No." I lost everything. I didn't respond, because I already knew. "My mother is in prison," he continued. "My business partners left. My friends stopped answering my calls." He swallowed hard. "You're the only thing I have left." I stepped forward slowly, holding my son against my shoulder. Then I said the final truth he needed to hear. "You stopped being my family the moment you tried to take my child." His voice rose suddenly. "You can't keep him from me." Neighbors' lights flicked on. Windows opened. The quiet street was waking up. "You're causing a scene," I said calmly. I don't care. He grabbed the gate, shaking it violently. Let me in. That was enough. I pulled out my phone and called the police. By the time officers arrived, he was still shouting, still demanding, still refusing to leave. They warned him once. He argued. They warned him again. He stepped toward them angrily. That was the moment the handcuffs came out. As they led him toward the patrol car, he turned back toward me. His voice sounded small now, almost broken. You'd really do this to me? I held my son a little closer. You tried to do worse to me. The patrol car drove away slowly, red lights fading down the quiet street. And just like that, the last piece of my past disappeared. He thought custody was power. He thought divorce was strategy. He thought grief made me weak. But strength isn't loud. It's patient. It's prepared. It's documented. He wanted control. What he got instead was consequence, permanent custody, divorce finalized, boundaries enforced, no forgiveness, no second chances, just the truth he never expected. If someone filed for divorce while you were giving birth, would you ever let them back in? Or would you do exactly what I did? Tell me in the comments. And besties, if you love strong omegas and real consequences, subscribe, because here, alphas don't win by manipulation. They lose by underestimating us.